Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this workshop for the Temple City Council. Currently, it is about 2:06. First item on the agenda is public comments. There being none, I'll move on to the next item. Item 2 is a work session. Item 1 is to discuss as maybe need any regular meeting agenda items for tonight's meeting. Council, anything, or staff, anything that you want to pull, cover, discuss? I'm gonna get that money, Wendell. Item 2, if you want to do an introductory speech right quick, but item 2 is to receive a presentation from Dr. Ott regarding the November bond.
And yes, and just as a reminder, everyone, since this is an election topic and we are in a city government meeting, just as a reminder, only fact-based statements and questions can be made, and it's you can't advocate either for or against the bond. Thank you.
Very good. Dr. Ott, after that wet blanket, you're up.
That really got me charged up.
It's always the attorneys.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a few introductions. Dan Posey, our board president. And I will introduce my predecessor, Dr. Batterfield, former superintendent TIC, and Christine Parks, our chief communications and community relations. Before I actually get into the presentation, you have a few handouts in front of you if you don't mind looking at them. No, you're fine. I think they can see. Yeah, I think this is good. Normally when I present even to the council, I'm really here just to give an update to state of the district. And so I didn't want to lose sight of that, even though today's presentation is about the bond. So you have a list here. I'm not going to go through them. You go through them on your own time. But I did want to include what I would consider some of the celebrations and highlights from the previous year, which, you know, was very difficult on public education across the state and the country. You have a bond summary here, and I'll cover this in much more detail. It's the one that has the blue border on top. And then the last one obviously is the front and back, and with the red border on top has the early voting sites, which are currently going on, as you know, and the window, which goes till the 29th. And then the back side is the uniform election day, November 2nd, and that has locations. That is not an exhaustive list of locations. As you know, you can vote outside of the city of Temple, but it does have ones that are familiar to folks here in the city of Temple. We actually have them oriented by the campus that it's closest to here on this map. Just thought for ease of proximity and orientation, that'd be the best way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the bond presentation. In full disclosure, I have mixed emotions because this is my last one. And so, I mean, I'm a little tired, but I think I've heard every question. So don't try to stump me. Just shake your head and we'll kind of keep going. All right. So Mayor Davis may have been right. Okay. It does work. All right. So in Temple ISD, as many of you know, because you participated in this process, the idea of improving facilities and moving forward and so forth, those were ideas that started a long time ago, but some landmark things that took place is in 2011. That was the first time TIC put together a comprehensive facilities master plan to really start to lay up what that work needs to look like. And the total cost, which isn't on here, of that master plan was around $250 million. You'll see the corresponding tax rates at the bottom of this chart, and I'll kind of walk through those side by side. That year in 2011, we had a successful bond election, took our first stride into the facilities master plan by passing a $55 million bond. 2 years later, actually, I'm going to back up. This year right here, this blue bar, that's when I was hired, 2012. It's not on there, but that's when I was hired in the district. In 2013, we actually went back out to the community for another asking, and that was in the form of a tax ratification election. That is different than a bond. Bond is for buildings, a TRE, excuse me, a TRE. That's for the guts in the building, technology, library collections. That's on the maintenance and operations side of the tax rate. TISD went out for a partial one. That was 8 cents. And you can see that tax rate increase reflected there. 2 years after that, in 2015, we went out for $136.5 million bond to take what I would call the second strike into the $250 million facilities master plan. And that was also successful. One thing I think that's important to note here is that in a 5-year period of time, TISD had 3 askings of the community. But since then, we've had none in the last 6 years. And I think that's a very important thing to put out there. In fact, what we've been doing since then, in my mind, is school. We've been doing school and finishing 2015 bond projects. 2018, that's when I was hired as superintendent. We were hearing a lot about growth in TISD. The city of Temple's been growing for some time, but not necessarily TISD, because most of that growth has been situated in the western part of the city, feeding Belton ISD. So this was exciting news. And we went out and contracted for a demographic study. And in that, sure enough, it validated that in the southeast quadrant, we would have 2,200 homes in the next 5 years, or units. And then in the northeast quadrant and in the northwest quadrant of the school district, we would have homes coming along. You see the tax rate go up here to $1.40. The reason for that is we had to sell our bonds in 2015 to pay for construction. So part of that increase, actually most of it, has to do with that particular bond sale, or those bond sales. In 2019, we did our second demographic study. It validated all the same things, but it actually showed more units coming in. And as a result, the school district, in particular the board, had the foresight to go out and purchase property. We purchased that tract of land, 47.5 acres on Barnhart and 95. And you guys have been involved in some expansion work out there for infrastructure. The reason for that many acres is because we thought it would be a good idea to have enough land to have an elementary and middle school on the same site. So for 9 years, K through 8, families had one location that would have a true neighborhood concept that they could bring their children to. And so in 2020, we conducted another demographic study, which validated everything. And these facilities master plans, this is important to know, they're usually good for about a decade. And so we re-upped the facility master plan here in December of 2020. And that was important because we had to include this new dynamic of growth, which we had had. Previous bonds were what I would call renovation bonds. So we had to redo our facilities master plan. And that was about a 16-month process with architects. You'll start to notice that right in here, the tax rate drops. And there are several reasons for it. One is bond refunding. The other is House Bill 3 legislation that passed in 2019, which compressed the maintenance and operations side of school district tax rate over a 2-year period of time. And then, of course, the most obvious reason is values have gone up. And when values go up, pennies yield more. So you don't need to have as high a tax rate, right, to generate the same amount of revenue. And so those 3 reasons are why you see that. And in fact, about a month ago, the school district dropped the tax rate once again by 4 cents. This is the lowest it's been since 2010, which isn't up here, but at that time was $1.21. We've dropped the tax rate 16.5 cents in the last 3 years. And that's really our contribution to everything. We don't go out to appraise the values of property or do any of that stuff. The tax rate's really where we come in. So here we are today with a called bond election. But this is really the long-range plan and the corresponding tax rate over the last several years. The other thing before I leave this slide I want you to know is I said the number here was 250. Well, if you add 55 and 136, it doesn't get you there. So there's some carryover items, right? And those are in the new facilities master plan and also in the bond proposal that I'll speak to in a second in detail. So here are some of the highlights that came out of the demographic study. There's only a few of them that I'll talk about here that are exciting. The first one is this one here, which it says 9,700 students by 2025. So that's about 1,200 more than what we have now, right? And then this one here, we're excited about. I won't show up. That the amount of students from surrounding districts that transferred in has increased. And in fact, that number has gone up even since last year. to over 30%. We're excited about that. This is the one here that we need to demonstrate we can position for. We're going to have almost 7,000 planned home lots in TISD and 11 future subdivisions. That's not City of Temple, that's TISD, right? Not outside the district. So that is something we really have to position ourselves for. So here's the elevator speech. You know, people ask you at the pharmacy or grocery or wherever you're at, hey, what's going on with this bond and what is it about? And this is really the summary of it. This is consistent with what you have at your place. First is to finish the job, take care of current families. I like to say to honor the original commitments we had that were carryover items from the 2011 facilities master plan that went into 2020. And some of them are listed here. Eliminate remaining 20 portables. Those of you that were involved in 2011, we had 47 portables in the school district, and the community spoke loud and clear and said, we do not want our students in portables. We want them in permanent structure attached to facilities. And so we have 20 left. As a school district, there are two ways that you can get rid of portables. One, you can just look at the number there and figure 25 a class, that's 500, and you can go build a school of 500 somewhere and rezone and rearrange the entire school district. The other way you can do it is you can go to those specific campuses that have 6 portables or 5 or 4, and you can move those out, and then you can build wings attached to those buildings so they're in permanent structure under one roof, and you keep kids in their neighborhoods. And it's more economical to do it that way. So that's the way that we have selected to approach this process. Next is security vestibule projects. Every campus in TISD has one, except for 3. And really what that is, that's that double door entry system. You have an exterior set of doors, you come in and then you have to be buzzed in. We have 3 campuses right now that only have the exterior set of doors. So once you go in, you have unfettered access. And that is Ray Allen, Kennedy Powell, and Hector P. Garcia, all of which are designed and built the same way. So those are our 3 outstanding projects from the original commitments we had. Wildcat Stadium renovations. This is a facility that we hadn't touched in terms of infrastructure. It was built in 1965. I like to say this, but the restrooms are still 1965. The ticket booth, I mean, everything, right? You know, most of the stuff around it that's infrastructure related. And so, although we believe in preserving history, there's a cost to that. And you do have to invest in that. And this is one of the facilities that we just haven't invested in terms of infrastructure. And this one here, a Renovate food service and maintenance facility. All of our buildings, including transportation, have all been touched by previous bonds, whether it's 2007, 11, or 15. But the only one that hasn't is the one located over there on 5th between Avenue E and F that has our maintenance, grounds, warehouse, and school nutrition staff. It was built in the 50s, no HVAC. And it's time. Everybody deserves to be in a standard facility, not a substandard facility, and they are a critical part of our organization. So this is one that's on the list as well. Program equity. This is still along the line of taking care of current families. We have 4 programs we're really proud of in TISD. One's advanced academics, IB notably, and of course that program is taken care of through core classroom renovations. Next would be Careertech. Well, we've taken care of most of those programs with the last bond, $36 million, but there's one we've left out, and that was ag. And then fine arts, obviously, we have a few gaps there. And then athletics is our last one. I'll address these specifically, what these projects are as we go through. But those are the 4 programs. And really, in my mind, any student that's competing and wearing a block T, they all should be competing in the best facilities possible, no matter what the program or discipline is. And the last one here, which is very exciting and new, welcome and prepare for new families. According to the last 3 demographic studies we've had, the way that we will be able to do that is by adding 14 classrooms across 4 campuses. And so that would be 4 at Monum, which is our southernmost middle school. It would be 4 at Temple High. It would be 4 at Scott Elementary, and then 2 at Kennedy Powell. So that takes care of your south and the central part. It allows you some rezoning options. And then the northwest, it gives you some seed room for that growth that will be in the out years there. And then the most exciting piece is adding a new elementary school in the southeast quadrant of TISD. The last time we added a school to the school system was in 1998. And we added 3 sister schools, Garcia, Ray Allen, and Kennedy Powell. So this is really exciting for the district. I'm going to go through this really quick, but this was basically our process. Did a survey, and purposely it was done after Temple College Bond was called. We put two numbers in there, and one was 185. That was the higher of the two, and it was favorable, the community response. And that's why we have not gone over 185. Our project list is certainly more than that, but we haven't gone on that over that because we want to stay true to the community in their response. First meeting we had, I went over basically everything I'm going over with all of you because we hadn't had an asking in 6 years. So we have to catch everybody up, right? And then we had projects and their costs. The community ranked them. It wasn't, I guess, towards a select group, or if you showed up, you could only participate if you showed up. We left the voting windows open for another 12 days till June 20th, and people got online and ranked projects. Based on their rankings, went out and presented two packages to the community August 4th, and we kept a window open for ranking then, and that was real lopsided on the one they wanted that came from the citizens. So this is basically the process that we took through the summer. Great engagement, a lot of participation, and I'm very proud of the community and how they have participated through the process. So this was not a superintendent presentation to the board, August 16th. I've said this from the beginning. I've always believed that the community sets the expectations, and really our job as administrators is to deliver and execute. So this presentation came from the community, the citizens. They presented to the board August 16th, and then it was up to the board whether they wanted to call the election. So I'm going to parrot their presentation here so you know what's in the proposal. They took the projects that were listed and decided and whittled down by the community, and they were divided into 4 pieces here. Growth and capacity, which is newer one, safety, security, facility master plan, project improvements, that's a fancy word for renovations, and equity and programs. So this is the first one, new elementary campus in the southeast quadrant. There's your price tag for it. Everything includes cost escalation. We work with multiple architects. We work with multiple construction folks, even ones that just put a school on the ground the last 6-7 months in districts that are close to us to get per square footage costs and so forth. This campus would be around 900 students. It'd be our largest elementary school, maybe 3 or 4 classrooms bigger than Thornton. And then Kennedy Powell, we had 2 classrooms here, 4 at Temple High. And then the 4 we had here at Scott and Bonham, they're a little different because on these campuses, you have to really pay attention to your unstructured spaces when you start adding more kids to a campus. And what I mean is your cafeteria, your library, your parking lots, and so forth. And so in these 2 cases, if you're adding over 100 kids to each of those campuses, you don't have enough room in those spaces. Scott doesn't have library listed because we expanded that library over 2015 bond as part of the master plan. So that's why these costs are a little higher, because we're also investing in those spaces and expanding them as well. This is not the design of the elementary school. It's just a picture of one up there. I'll just say this in here: if the bond passes, I promise you that that elementary school will look nothing like any elementary school in this county. And I'll just leave it at that. This up here is the property, Barnhart Old 95. And of course, you guys are very familiar with this because the investments that you have in infrastructure. And then of course, the middle school will be back here in out years, and then the stadium back that way. This is FMP, project improvements. This is the facility I was talking about. I'm going to actually show you a rendering of this that houses our auxiliary services, maintenance, and so forth over there on 5th. And that's the price tag to do that. Transportation Service Center. We are not going to do additions there, but we do have some renovations. So portables over there. Fencing is old. There's some that we have to expand a few bays or renovate some of the bays. Athletic training complex. So when we think about our programs, we put in a CTE complex in 2018 is when we stood that up. We just opened a new fine arts complex in 2020, right there on the, I guess it'd be the west end of the high school on 31st. And then this is our last one here. This would go on the east end of the stadium behind the small T scoreboard. And that keeps everything inside the stadium, and the old weight room and training room and so forth on the outside. Those would get knocked down and turn into green space and parking for visitors. And then Wildcat Stadium, I already talked about that. And those are some of the projects along those lines. So this is an example of what we're hoping that this would look like. 5th Street is where the van's pulling in, and then this E and F. This certainly isn't the facility today, but I'll tell you the exciting thing, since you're sitting here, and I know most of you know about this already, probably all of you, the exciting thing is we have a chance to partner in this with respect to pedestrian lighting, sidewalks, and maybe even some facade work. As a school district, we almost own this entire stretch on 5th Street on both sides of the road. There's only one piece of property we don't own currently, and I think we'll get there. We just purchased another one, I guess it was a month ago at a board meeting. And so this is a really good opportunity. We're committed to this location. It's in the center of the school district and has a city. This is an anchor point, really, between downtown and T-Med. And so it provides a great opportunity with some of the things that y'all are doing, working that down 3rd Street and so forth. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to work together, not just in dressing up that part of town, but also committing to something long-term that will serve the community for a long time. Other ones here on renovations. We have parking lot at Temple High School. Wheatley, that's our discipline campus. But, you know, like I say, just because kids get in trouble, doesn't mean you stop loving them. They're not over there forever. They're over there for a little bit and then they come back, right? But we have not done anything to those classrooms. The only thing we've done in that facility is an elevator or put in a new elevator in the windows. Those teachers and students, when they're over there, they should be in comparable classrooms as well. Digital marquees, we have that everywhere in the school district, except for at Edwards and Temple High. The hope would be that we put a really nice one there on 31st Street in front of Fine Arts, to where you could see it up and down all the way to, you know, the Adams area and then up to Nugent, and who knows, maybe even all the way to I-35. That would be a really good situation. Restroom upgrades, ranked #1 by the community. #1, I mean, over security vegetables. But the truth is, we have done a great job on some of the classrooms and hallways. Restrooms we haven't really touched, in particular those campuses. So this would be a great opportunity. Some of the campuses we've done new builds to, obviously those restrooms are taken care of, and you'll see that in the video later. Campus infrastructure improvements, this is just the cost of getting your buildings to continue to last. Schools last 50, 60 years, maybe a little more than that. And so you have to replace roofs, flooring, you have to do those kinds of things. When we presented this to the community, they asked to see it broken down the next meeting, so we did. And here are the projects. Those are by campus, classroom, and dollar amounts there. All this is on the website. I'm not going to go through each one of these. In fact, on the website, any presentation I've done with a voiceover is there. So if you ever need to play it back again, you certainly can. Safety and security, the fire suppression systems, we need upgrades on 7 of our campuses. Our high school cameras were done 18 months ago. The school's next in the queue, so we'd like to upgrade those. Redundancy site for technology, as you expand as an organization, you certainly want more than one point of failure for communications. This would actually be at Bonham because we're expanding down south, and that'd be part of the renovations there. And the sidewalk, pavement, and lighting improvements at those respective campuses. Safety and security here, these are the portables and where they're situated. So 6 at Hector P, Kennedy Powell 2, and so forth. The 7 at Cater, the only difference with that one is we would not go in and replace those with wings. Those 7, which 7 by 25 is 150, something like that. Those kiddos would be taken care of through a rezoning process, and either end up at say Fort Marshall or elementary school. Those are 3 security vestibules. Perimeter fencing at Temple High School, and that would not be chain link. That would be the black iron fencing that we have, the decorative fencing around parts of the stadium. Temple High sits on almost a perfect rectangle. It's our most populated campus and ironically our most porous campus. So we would want to make sure to have that around the campus for safety and security reasons. And this is not cheap, by the way. Exterior door access, that's moving from keys to a badge system. 4 of our campuses are already pre-wired for that because we had done renovation work, Thornton, Jefferson, Scott, and Western Hills. And so we could get in and pilot this system pretty cheap at those campuses. We started at our admin building. As you know, if you've been there, that you can't get in with a key there. You have to use your badge. Middle school athletic facilities. This is, we're a 6A school district and our kids do not participate outside of Bonham on occasion on a field at their home site. As you know, they go to Woodson to participate in girls soccer at junior high, which we added last year, boys soccer, and boys football at the junior high level. And really, I'd say 4A and above, you should have your own competition fields. And we do have the opportunity to do that. Renovate practice gym and add weight room. So all three of the campuses have different renovations. Like Lamar has an upgraded locker room and a weight room, but say not a gym. And so we'd have to, or actually Lamar doesn't have an upgraded locker room, Travis does. So basically we want to get all those up to standard. And then at two of our sites, Bonham and Travis, we have a large enough footprint to put a 4-lane track at each of those. And then Temple High School Auditorium, Sound and Light was last put in 2007. And this would be an opportunity. They've run its course to take care of the sound piece of it. So this is an example. This is really exciting. Travis is over here. Of course, you know the baseball fields. You own this property. We do not. We work together on an agreement to allow our kids, by the way, it doesn't look like this right now, to have our kids, there's like some courts over here and just empty land. We have kids come out for practice and so forth. There's no competition field. But this could be a competition field. And I think the beauty in this is it wouldn't just be for Travis kids. We allow, as you know, the community to use our facilities, not just playgrounds, but the stadium. You go up there on a weekend or early morning, this will be the same way. People in the neighborhood want to walk the track, they'll have a track that they can walk. Little League can come over. Ralph Wilson situated over here. They send their kids over here after school. There's a lot of possibilities here. And I think this represents a really good partnership. Total dollar amount on this is a little over $4 million, and we would work together and go half on it. And what a great situation for the community. And it would certainly improve this area too, the T-Med area. And Bonham would have the same setup. Lamar would too, on the front side of 3rd Street minus the track. You couldn't put a 1-lane track there. There's just not the room. Ag Barn, I talked about that. That's the CTE program that's outstanding. Because it's not part of the main building, it's on the back side. We hadn't renovated that one, I think, since 2007, I believe. But that needs to be expanded and renovated. That program's really grown. Here's some other athletic improvements. The girls soccer practice field, proud of that. That's part of our gender equity plan that our board approved about 2 years ago. And this would be taken care of in there. Softball and baseball lighting improvements. That means going to LED like our tennis, new soccer field and stadium has. And these playgrounds need to be replaced. And once again, the city or the community uses these playgrounds. Places where there are pocket parks, they take their families on the weekend over there. And that's a really good thing. We don't lock that up. Meredith Dunbar, what a wonderful renovation, a great rededication ceremony that we had. But there's one thing left. The seats in the auditorium are still 1960 something. And so they're not ADA accessible either. So we need to take care of that piece, and that will become a fully functional auditorium for, I would think, a lot of middle school events could take place there. This is what it looks like ballot-wise. The entire project list minus Wildcat Stadium is here, and there's the total amount. I'll get into dollars and cents in a second, 178.3. By law, the stadium has to be separate and apart. We didn't do that deliberately. That's by law. We did it because you have to do it. And you can thank Allen ISD for that. They rolled in a $66 million stadium with a bunch of elementary schools. People weren't happy about it because they felt hemmed in, that they had to vote for it. And then that legislative session, they came out and said, anything that deals with a spectator venue of over 1,000 has to be in a separate proposition, even if it's a bathroom renovation. So that's why you don't see Lamar and Travis and so forth over there. That's over here. That's not over 1,000. And we worked with the Attorney General's office on that before we even got to this point. This is what it looks like, dollars and cents. 12-cent increase on the first prop. Keep in mind, we have dropped the tax rate by 16.5, and then on the second prop on the stadium, it's not even a penny, it's a half a cent. And you know the deal, as values go up, those numbers go down. Monthly wise, this is all based on $100,000 valuation. So every month, that both together would come to $10.42. If you live in a $200,000 home, it's $20.84, and so forth. And annually, it's the same thing, $125 a year or $250 a year. $1.24 doesn't mean anything to anybody, unless you see it in a normative context. Well, there you go. These are current tax rates, school districts around us, ones that we are in comp groups with by the Texas Education Agency, ones we compete with teachers for. And we're not at the bottom, but we are in the bottom third for sure. And with the tax, if the both propositions pass, would be somewhere above the midline. And quite honestly, that just shows you this is the cost of schools, guys. We're not asking for anything over there. That's what it shows you. We'll skip that because we're past October 2nd. But anyway, this is the document you have in front of you. Of course, you know, early voting is going on right now in locations, and then election is November 2nd. And this is the last piece here. Do I need to press something? And all this shows you, a lot of you are very involved in the schools. I know that, or in terms of supporting schools, but this is kind of a peek under the hood for those of you who can't get in all the campuses. And it just shows you what happened in 2015 as a result of investing in that last spot and what we were able to do with facilities. Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go. It's right there. There you go. high school. Time today, and we'll continue to work hard and do everything we can to not let you down. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments from anyone.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I'm sure every evening or every morning you're watching the names and numbers of people that have voted. Does it look like they're equal with the two different packages? Or is one person voting for both, or have you noticed a trend where one person is voting for only one package instead of both packages?
So the data that I've seen for the very first time today doesn't have it separated by proposition.
It does on the voter rosters. It doesn't list which,
Oh.
yeah, you just have to know what precinct someone would live in and if they'd be in Temple ISD to know they got it on their ballot.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't know the answer to that.
How's turnout been?
It's been better than in 15.
We're actually really excited. And I think you've seen the reports in the Telegram, particularly at the end. It's been higher than, I think it's record setting from what
Good.
I understand. So, I mean, I certainly think we have worked really hard to get the information out there. For sure.
So you said there's some undone projects from the 15 bond. And obviously, I'm
Or from the
assuming.
master plan, 2011.
Yes,
master plan.
yeah. I'm assuming that you're still using that authority for those bonds to finish those projects, and those projects are not rolled into this one.
No, so in 2011, when the facilities master plan was complete, 250, you would not go to your taxpayers all at once to try to capture that.
Right.
You look at that master plan over 10 years and you stage your askings to cover. So the first two bonds, 2011 and 2015, come together at about 180 something million, which means that there were some projects that were not included in those two askings because that would have been part of the third asking. I call this bond, actually, I call this one kind of a transitional bond. This picks up projects that were outstanding projects from the last master plan, and then includes the new ones and the growth dynamic in the 2020 facilities master plan. So the projects that were not included in 2011 and 15 are in this one. I hope that answers your question.
What's the total number of students in PISD?
Right now, we're 8,500.
What's the total of high school?
23. Yeah, so the question that I invariably always get, I've answered, I don't know how many times, is, well, why don't we have the second high school? Well, here's why we don't, guys, and I'm going to answer it again. Because when you look at school districts, they wait until their high school gets to be about 2,900 or 3,000, just like our neighbors did. Belton High School is carrying about 3,000 students before you split off. Because you're not going to go to a community and ask for a $140 million high school and have another one that's half empty. Nobody has two 3A high schools in a two high school district. We're a small 6A. We squeaked in the last UIL realignment by 52 students. The only high school that's smaller than us in our playing district is Copper State. All the other school districts are much bigger than we are. So we're 600 students shy in a demographic study of doing that. Now, here's what I will tell you. If we get to a point where we need one, we will absolutely buy the land and build one. We're just not there.
That 30% transfer rate do you see that continuing or increasing?
So just this last year, when I talked with our student services person, they pulled in the demographic study, that did go up.
That speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think that's positive.
Oh, yes, yes, I mean positive volumes.
Any other questions?
Anything else? One thing that we talked about and continue to talk about is the good positive partnership that we have with the school district. It takes everyone, right? City
Absolutely.
schools, so we, as you know, I just want to say it publicly, we always appreciate the fine job that you guys do at the school district, and we appreciate, we always appreciate the partnership too. So you guys keep it up. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Back at you. And if you need more handouts, we have plenty of them here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Good. Thank you all for attending. Appreciate it. Good to see you guys. I got it. Yeah, that's why I was at.
Yes.
I have left point. Thanks, Brandon. See you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank y'all. Bye.
All right, moving on to item number 3, is to receive a presentation regarding the redistricting initial assessment and next steps presented by Biggerstaff, East, Delgado, Acosta, and Acosta LLP.
Good afternoon, City Council members. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Gunnar Sequist, and I'm a lawyer with Biggerstaff, East, Delgado, Acosta. And it is our pleasure to be able to assist the city with this redistricting process. As you probably know, we're actually helping several of the entities here in Bell County, which is going to give us the opportunity to have some synergy as we go through this process. We're working with Colleen, the county, as well as Dr. Ott of the school district. So what I have for you all today is just the initial assessment that we have done based on the 2020 census data, which has come out late this year. In normal decades, we expect to have the federal decennial census data between February and April, so in the spring. And because of COVID and some other circumstances, this year it was delayed significantly. So we got it this last month. And obviously that puts us in terms of the redistricting process for the city on a little bit more of a compressed time schedule than we might normally do if we had that data going back to the spring. Have plenty of time, and we'll lay out the schedule for that today. Of course, it is the decennial census that drives this process. So after the 2020, or after each decennial census comes out, governmental bodies with single member districts here, your city council districts, have to reevaluate the districts and determine if you need to make any changes to your boundary lines. And when we look at that, we are applying essentially 3 primary principles and then a diagnostic tool that used to be a principle that I will talk about. But when we look, the first thing we look at in terms of whether your city council member districts are in balance is the one person, one vote requirement. This stems from the federal constitution, the equal protection provision. And it says that all provisions have, or excuse me, all single member districts have to be roughly proportional in balance. And the reason for that, of course, is to make sure that the voters in one district's votes are not undervalued or overvalued based on a differential in population between the city council precincts or districts, excuse me. The second thing we look at is the Federal Voting Rights Act, and in particular, Section 2. And Section 2 is a non-discrimination provision. And so applying that, we make sure that any changes that are made don't have the effect of diluting or otherwise discriminating on the basis of race or language minority. We also have a line of cases out of the United States Supreme Court, which is referred to as the Shaw versus Reno line of cases. And what that tells us is that race can't be a predominant factor in redistricting. So the use of race and ethnicity for purposes of redistricting is to make sure that we are in compliance with federal standards and requirements, but not to use it beyond that as an actual factor in redistricting. So redistricting is a race neutral process other than to ensure that we're complying with federal law. Finally, you have probably, or you may have heard a discussion about Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. It used to be, if we were doing this process 10 years ago, that we would have to go through this whole process, put together a submission, send it to the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., have them approve it and send it back to me or to us before we could put that into effect for the city. That was known as the pre-clearance process. You may have heard of the United States Supreme Court decision in Shelby County versus Holder. What Shelby County said was that this standard, Section 5, doesn't apply as a mandatory requirement anymore, but we can still use it as a diagnostic tool. It helps to make sure that we are redistricting in a way that also complies with Section 2. Just a little bit about the one person, one vote requirement. As I mentioned, it's a constitutional requirement, and again, requires approximately equal populations. Because of the way people are just naturally distributed geographically, it is often impossible to have an exactly equal number of citizens across each of the precincts or the districts. However, we have to make them approximately equal. And what the courts have told us is that what approximately equal means is a total deviation that is less than 10%. And when I talk about total deviation or maximum total deviation, as you may hear it discussed, what that means is that we take the total population, we divide it by the number of city council districts. That gives us what we would call the ideal district. If you could make every district equal, that's the number you'd have. To calculate the deviation, we then take the population that is the furthest above that ideal and add it to the population or the percentage of the population that is furthest below. So you take away the negative and basically add those two numbers together. The distance from the most populous to the ideal and the distance from the least populous to the ideal, and that'll give us our total maximum deviation. And this is just a sample example. Here, our District A is 10% above the ideal. Our District D is 20% below. That would give us a 30% total maximum deviation. A little bit about the census data that we have received and will be using when it comes to talking about redistricting. What we have been waiting for is this PL 94-171 file. And that gives us census data at the census block level. And when we start drawing maps, we'll be able to show you where the census blocks are that we get that data from. What we use typically are the total population numbers that the census gives us. The census will also give us voting age population. It will give us race identity, and it will give us Hispanic origin. It does not give us citizenship in terms of the actual census file. So what do we use when we're redistricting? When we are looking at balancing populations, we look specifically at total population. So when we're trying to make sure that the city council districts are roughly proportional in size, we don't break down by citizenship, we don't break down by voting age, we use total population and apportion on that basis. When it comes to evaluating compliance with federal law, the Voting Rights Act, that's where we'll use voting age population or in some circumstances, some approximation of citizenship voting age population if it becomes necessary. A little bit about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, because as we go through the process with you, this is one of the things that we'll be watching, and it will also guide the way that we look at redrawing districts with you. Just something to keep in mind. Again, Section 2 is an anti-discrimination provision when it comes to voting. It says that there can't be discrimination, no discriminatory intent or effect of a redistricting plan on the basis of race or language minority status. Oftentimes when you're talking about redistricting, if you're looking at Section 2, you'll hear it talked about in terms of vote dilution, which means that what Section 2 prohibits is drawing districts in such a way as to dilute the voting power of protected minority or language status voters. And the typical way that you will hear that discussed are two concepts that are related, which are cracking and packing. And basically what that means is the Voting Rights Act prohibits packing minority voters into an individual district in such a way that it dilutes their ability to have an effect on other districts, or it prohibits, conversely, breaking up populations of minority or protected voters that, if left intact, would have a greater effect on the ability to elect candidates, and then splitting them up so that they're in separate districts and thereby reducing their voting power. There are other practices, but these are generally the ones that you will hear about and that we'll be keeping an eye on as we go through this process. The flip side of that coin is the Shaw versus Reno case, as I discussed. And that's where the court has told us that race-based decision-making in redistricting is really not an appropriate factor and shouldn't be a predominant consideration in drawing a plan. So what the courts have told us is we look at race and ethnicity and protected status for the purpose of making sure that we are not having a discriminatory effect. We don't draw on that basis. So for legal compliance, narrowly tailored, but not as a predominant factor in drawing plans. And so that line of cases is what you will often hear as talked about as a racial gerrymander. And this is actually the map from that Shaw versus Reno case that the Supreme Court looked at. And what you can see is a very irregular, bizarrely shaped district that was drawn in the yellow area there. And what the court looked at that and said, look, there's really no justification for drawing a district that way other than an improper gerrymander. And so when we see, and this is not what you'll see in your districts, obviously, but when you hear about bizarrely shaped gerrymandered districts, these are the kind of things that we watch out for. This is an example that came out of the Harris County area. This was Bush versus Vera. It's another United States Supreme Court case. And on top was the plan that was found unacceptable. And as you can see, again, we just have a lot of bizarrely shaped districts. And so what the court has told us and what we try to do is we try to draw compact, contiguous districts that look more like this. One of the things you'll note is they're not always square. You can still have some unusual shapes, even in well-drawn districts. That's just the way a function of where population lies. But we try to draw compact, nice, compact, and shapely districts. And this is pretty much what I just covered. Just a quick word on Section 5. I've already kind of explained where we are on this. The old standard in Section 5 was retrogression, which basically means that if you draw a new plan, you can't retrogress or essentially make protected voters, minorities, or language status worse off under a new system. That's the retrogression standard. And what the courts have told us, again, the Shelby County case says this is not a mandatory standard anymore, but it is still a standard that the courts use to look at as a diagnostic tool under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So we will certainly, it's something we always keep in mind. Again, it's not a per se violation of anything. We don't have to do pre-clearance, but it's something that we still pay attention to make sure that we're in good shape under federal law. As part of this process, and I believe this is on the council agenda for this evening, we're going to be asking you to adopt 2 resolutions. And the first one will have to do with adopting redistricting criteria. And what these are the traditional standards that we use or that the city council will use in drawing a plan. And this is what the courts have told us are appropriate, legitimate redistricting criteria. The first is using identifiable boundaries, major roadways, geographic landmarks, creeks, rivers, those kinds of things, so that you can have an identifiable boundary and show why a particular line went where it was. 2, maintaining communities of interest in neighborhoods. Again, this is going to incorporate somewhat the protected minority areas that we were talking about in terms of avoiding cracking or packing, but it is not limited to that basis. It's also if you have neighborhoods that had traditionally been in a district together, it is a traditional criteria not to split up neighborhoods or other interests that have shared interests or resources. We use whole voting precincts when possible. Of course, after the county, since we have changes coming to the state maps this year, the county precincts are going to change a little bit. I'll talk with you guys about or likely to change. And we will, at the end of this process, work with the county to get its voting, to get your information to them and to work with them on the voting precincts. But we typically try not to split voter precincts, again, between council districts. Again, depending on where folks are geographically, that's not always possible, but that is certainly the criteria we start with. We will base plans based on the existing districts. And so the illustrative plan that we'll get to you, which I'll talk to you about in a moment, is going to be based on what you have right now. We don't go reinvent the wheel and draw a totally different map and start working from there. We start with what we have, what the city has now. And from our illustrative plan standpoint, we'll basically give you an example from which the council will draw. And our example will basically be what you have right now, plus the fewest moves that it takes to get you in balance. And then whatever changes you want to make to that, you guys will work from there and we'll just be able to advise you on it. Again, try to get our districts in relatively equal size. districts that are compact and contiguous. We keep existing incumbents in their districts, and then narrowly tailoring plans to comply with the Voting Rights Act. So the reason the resolution is before you all this evening is the council can adopt this, and this will really guide the process. And it makes a record for anybody who wants to come back and check our work down the line to say, here are the standards that were applied, so we can see transparently how the city ended up with the plan that it ended up with. That's basically this is. So this is the process. Step 1 and 2 are going to be today. I'm giving you the initial assessment right now. Tonight, you'll get the plan criteria. There will also be guidelines for public participation. And I'll talk about it in a minute. There will be more than one opportunity for public input as we go through this, as the city goes through this process. But the guidelines, which is the second resolution, along with the criteria that will be in front of the council this evening, those set out basically the standards for public comment and input. Oftentimes, we will have not just folks who want to come in and speak at a city council meeting or a workshop, but who may actually want to go off and draw their own plan, submit that as an alternative. And what these guidelines do is they specify a time frame for doing that, and they also put in place some standards for what that needs to look like, so that everybody who's turning something in is operating under the same general standards, so we can then, on behalf of the city, make apples to apples comparisons between plans, as opposed to having some plans that are just a piece of the plan here, because it becomes very difficult. A lot of times what we'll have is somebody will be particularly interested in one district, for example, and so they'll give us a map that they'd like to see for their district without redistricting the rest of the city. Well, if you don't know where the rest of that population goes, you can't really compare or analyze it. And so one of the guidelines you'll see is, if you're going to give us a map, you got to redistrict the whole city so that we can make an apples to apples comparison to anything that we're looking at with the city council. But that's what those guidelines are for. The next step is we'll have the next meeting when I will be with you all. Before then, we will develop an illustrative plan. And I know I talk a lot in terms of we up here. The real, the entity that is drawing these maps is going to be you all. The city council that draws the maps, it's the city council that will make the final determination. All we do is provide a platform for you to do that on. And to analyze any legal issues surrounding it. So when we develop an illustrative plan, like I said, we're going to bring in a plan that looks very much like what you have right now, but that gets you in balance in a way that we feel like complies with all of the applicable legal standards. And then from that point, we will have a meeting, whether it's in a workshop or in a regular city council meeting, where I'll have a GIS person available with software. We'll put the map up on the screen like this, and we can draw in real time. So if there are any changes, any alternatives you'd like to see, and we can do that in real time and produce different plans too. It's not like we have to just work from one. So if there are different options or alternatives that you all would like to see, we can put those together and then help you guys get those posted for publication and get some public comment. And so that's the next piece. Once we bring you an illustrative plan and you guys take an initial crack at making any changes that you feel you want to make on the front end, the next process is the city will post that for review by the citizenry, and we will have a meeting, a public hearing with public comment. We'll be able to take input and receive additional plans. We can then analyze those comments and give you guys a report on what those suggestions show and how they might be implemented or what issues they might present. And then we'll have, once we've had a chance to incorporate or make any additional amendments based on comments or other input by the city council, we'll have a final adoption meeting. And at that point, whatever plan or options are at that point have made the cut will be before you, and you'll get to take a final vote on that. And all of that happens in public meetings where the public will have an opportunity for input at each of those stages. And then finally, implementation. And that's an important piece, because our GIS staff will take whatever plan is finally adopted by the city, we'll get it over to Bell County, get it input in their systems to make sure that your elections go smoothly under the new plan. This is our current timeline or schedule. We're here today doing the initial assessment. The first drawing, and you'll also do the adoption this evening of the criteria and guidelines. The first drawing workshop is set at 11 for November 4th. And that will be the meeting where I'll bring you an illustrative plan. We'll get a look at it, make any changes you feel is appropriate, get that posted. This second meeting on December 2nd will be a second drawing workshop, but we'll also have a public hearing here. And we'll work with you guys to get some public posting notice to get up on the website or published in the local paper as you see fit. It's not specifically, there's no specific legal requirement as to website versus the paper. It's just whatever your traditional practice is. And then right now we have you set for a final adoption on December 16th. The important point I want to make is ultimately for May elections, we need to get this done by the beginning of the candidate filing period, which is in January 19th. So as you'll see, I've got some extra time built in here. So if at any point here, we feel like we need an additional meeting or an additional public hearing or additional drawing sessions, we have time to do that, and we're happy to accommodate the council in any way that it sees fit. The main thing we want to make sure is that you guys feel that you've had more than enough opportunity for your input, and then we give the public the same.
Wait.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that public hearings are going to be between 12/2 and 12/16?
The way we would normally do it, actually, and it should be here, that it would be at this second meeting.
At the
we have a
second.
public hearing.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And, also we'll just say at the public hearing is typically when we set the cutoff date for submitting alternative plans from the public. So one of the things that often will dictate whether we have any meetings in between here is what we get at this public hearing. I mean, if we get several alternatives that we need to go back and analyze and give you a report on, then we may try to have another meeting in between. So this is just what the data looks like. These are your districts as they currently are. And what we end up with is the population as of the 2020 census overall for the city, 82,081 people. That would give us an ideal size for each city council district of about 20,520 people. The way it sits right now as a result of the 2020 census, districts 3 and 4 are your heavy districts. They're overpopulated. District 4 is the most overpopulated. It's about 28.46% above that ideal size. And then your least populated are going to be 1 and 2, with 2 being the least populated. And it's a little over 5,000 under the ideal size. So you're going to be needing to move people population generally from 3 to 4 into 1 and 2 to get your balance.
Can we get a copy of that sheet?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Okay, the whole thing, really.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
We can certainly get you that. And it also, this is for public distribution. So if you all wanted to post this, that is certainly fine by us. This is when we look at voting rights. This is just the same chart, but showing voting age population instead of total population. And what you'll see is the trends are the same. The numbers are just a little bit smaller. You're always going to have less VAP or voting age population than total population. But in terms of the numbers, you're going to see about the same. One of the things we looked at just as we're going through and we're looking at the voting rights, this is based on the census data, a thematic map showing where your Hispanic population is distributed throughout the city. And so that's one of the things we'll be looking at. Your Hispanic population is right now most populous in 1 and 2, but pretty well distributed throughout the city. And this is going to be your African-American thematic map, which shows you where your African-American population is throughout the city. And your largest population of African-American right now is going to be in precinct 2, 1 and 2. And then we do have some other groups, but they're relatively small. So from a voting rights standpoint, we're going to be focusing primarily on those groups. And we'll make all these charts available to you. Are there any questions for me? I know I went through that kind of quickly. So if you have any, please let me know.
I do.
Please do.
I worked on this 10 years ago, so
Okay.
I ought to know this and I don't. And I wasn't clear what you said. Voting age versus total population. How do we deal with that?
So for purposes of, oh gosh, sorry. Rebalancing. So when we are looking at rebalancing, we look at total population. So when we're talking about this ideal size, we're talking about ideal size in total population.
Total population is what we're not looking at voting age. We're
We-
looking,
That's right.
okay.
The only
that's
thing
fine.
we look at for voting age for, and in particular, it's citizen voting age, is for Section 2 compliance.
Right. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Any other questions I can help with?
It'll be an interesting process. I've not done something like that before.
It is interesting, you know, you guys have, I didn't tell you, if we take your total deviation, you're at 54%. So we're, you know, you have a fair number of people who are either over or underpopulated right now. But you know, the nice thing that you guys have, which not everyone does, is, you know, you do have districts that generally touch each other. A lot of times I'll have some that don't, and those are typically harder to redistrict because you've got to move population across districts as opposed to in and out. But I think you'll enjoy the process. The redistricting software is very cool, and it also will be able to show you at a very detailed, granular level where these lines are being moved, where your populations are. I can tell you when we are done with this process, you're going to have a very good understanding of where folks are in each of your districts and throughout the city. So
When you're working with the school district and us, since we're all working with you,
yes, ma'am.
is there any effort? We should have asked the school district, Dr. Ott, while he was here. Is there any effort to try to coordinate that better with the school district having more districts? That's confusing for the population sometimes. What I voted District 4 for the school district for my school, the person on the school board.
Right.
But I vote in District 3 for my city council person. That's confusing for people.
It is, and it's, you know, we can certainly look at as we go through how those districts might overlap, because there are more trustee districts than there are city council
Right,
districts, and because the population, you know, the ideal size for each of those is going to be different than the ideal
Oh, that's
size
the reason.
of what
Right,
yours
right.
are. It is, you know, it's
Yeah,
they
yeah,
usually don't line up in a very perfect way,
right.
but we can do our best to line them up.
It's but it's because of the population size for the two agencies, if you will.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
They're
I
going to
got
have a different ideal size.
Right.
And so what might be in balance for one of their districts might very well be, or likely would be
Right,
out of
it
balance for
would
one of
be.
yours.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Where is the, now we're talking about school district, where in District 4, where roughly is the BISD, TISD boundary? Wingle, do you know that?
I say roughly 363.
Did that far in?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think Wildflower.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
where they carved wildflower
Shagley.
out. They carved wildflower out.
No, it's fine.
Wow, interesting.
It was a masterful plan.
Very good. Council, any other questions?
Well, let me just say thank you all very much for your time today and for allowing us to go through this process with you. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Okay. Let's take 5. I think we're probably doing okay. All right. We are back in session. Kelly, ready? Dazzle. Oh, I didn't read that in. So item number 4 is to receive a presentation regarding proposed amendments to Chapter 17, the historic preservation of the city's code of ordinances.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a very quick presentation. This is a very minor revision to Chapter 17 of the Code of Ordinances for Historic Preservation. Doing a little bit of cleanup work adding a section with some specific language just to help guide us in our review process of our certificate of appropriateness applications, which is how we monitor work being done in our historic preservation district. So basically, this is the ordinance that's our local statute that gives the city the ability to protect our historic places through zoning. So we have a historic preservation zoning overlay. And the provisions are found in chapter 17. So here's the boundaries of our local historic district. And all the properties that fall within this purple box are where our chapter 17 applies. And so far, this is the only one that we have within our city. Our chapter 17 does allow for us to do individual historic sites, like local landmarks, but we currently do not have any. So it's all within this contiguous boundary.
Are you able to orient us on that map by street, maybe?
Sure. So here's French running this direction. And then most people are familiar with 9th is kind of the main thoroughfare going through. But anyways, here would be 3rd Street over here. So the 3rd Street goes across on 3rd. So this is 3rd right here. So only a portion of it has both sides of 3rd.
And then to the east,
And to the east, it ends, which is very odd to me, but it does end in mid-block between 13th and 15th. And then it kind of does a little wiggling up on the north side of Nugent.
In essence, it goes down an alley there, doesn't it?
And that's something that, again, we can look at changing some of this up in the future once we get a little bit further into some of our revisions of chapter 17. Like I said, this is a very minor amendment, but we will be bringing more significant changes to you guys in the future. So one of our ultimate goals for the city is to become a certified local government. This is a program that's through the National Park Service administered at the state level. And there's just some certain criteria that we really need to be in alignment with before we can even start that application process, which we have several things established already. And this is kind of just a quick breakdown of some of those criteria. So have adopted and enforced a local preservation ordinance. So that is our chapter 17. And it says future amendment there because we are going to do an overhaul because it has several items that are missing that the state would require us to have. Establish a preservation commission. So you guys, thank you very much for the recently established our Historic Preservation Board and our last update to our boards and commissions policy. So we really appreciate that. So we have completed that task. Redoing the alterations and demolitions of designated properties, following in the Secretary of Interior standards. So that's what I'm bringing forward to you today. That was not mentioned in chapter 17 at all as it was written before. So we are wanting to add that language to bring us in alignment with some of those criteria. Establish criteria for local designation of historic properties. So that criteria is found within chapter 17 already. We will want to make some tweaks to that just to kind of make it a little easier for us to implement. Enforce a minimum 60-day stay of demolition for landmarks. So again, that's going to be one of those amendments that's just brought forward to you guys when we do that full overhaul of chapter 17. Appoint a historic preservation officer. So I have been appointed the historic preservation officer, so we can check that off the list as well. And then adopt and maintain local preservation plan, a statement of goals and objectives for the local preservation program. So that's something that is going to be a task of our historic preservation board. And they will work on this and develop this plan and bring that to you guys as well for approval.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kelly,
Let me go back to that.
back up. Yeah. Establish criteria for local designation of historic properties. Does that only pertain to the historic district?
So what that one means is just the language that allows us to, gives us basically that process of how we can establish a historic district. So say Jackson Park neighborhood, once, you know, the residents show an interest in becoming a historic district, that criteria is
So
outlined in
another,
chapter
could a individual property outside of the historic district fall into that category?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that would be labeled as a local landmark,
Okay,
but it would have the same protections found in chapter 17 for historic preservation.
perfect.
And it actually applies that zoning overlay to that property.
Okay.
So is that what has been done with Fox Dog that particular area?
No, and that's a great question. So that's a program that was under Parks and it has since shifted into the planning department just to kind of get all of our historic preservation efforts into under one roof. So we've actually placed a moratorium on that program as it exists. They had placed their application before we put a halt to that program. So basically that one has no regulatory teeth to it at all. It's just a voluntary, hey,
Probably
we have
good
an
for
old
them.
building, which is perfect.
Yeah.
We really want to celebrate a lot of structures that might not qualify for an actual local landmark under the criteria that you would find for that type of program. But it is something still significant to our community and we want to draw that attention to it. And it's really more of a heritage type designation. So we're looking to change, that's another task for the Historic Preservation Board is to divvy those two programs up. So we'll have a heritage marker, which has no regulatory teeth to it at all. And then we'll have our local landmark designation, which falls under our Historic Preservation Chapter 17, and that will be the zoning overlay. So we'll still want to offer both just so we can keep that momentum going and keep that interest in historic preservation. But we also want to make sure that we delineate the two programs so we can have those protections where they're warranted. Any other questions on criteria?
Alterations, review alterations to, that seems like a pretty broad word. I mean, it's alterations, what's the right word? Is it something as simple as painting a door? Or is that considered an alteration and my neighbor across the street doesn't like my new pretty baby blue door? Or does that mean, a wholesale rework of the outside?
So both. So it is a broad word and it's done that way on purpose. So there's different levels of review within historic preservation. So there's administrative review, qualify for an administrative approval. And that's one of the things that you'll see coming forward later on in Chapter 17, kind of cleaning that up a little bit, making it very clear what can be administratively approved, things that need to be elevated to the Historic Preservation Board, which would be the final designate or decision. And then there's other things that would be escalated through planning and zoning and then to council. And that would be where like a local designation of a local landmark would add that zoning overlay. So yes, if somebody wants to do something like changing out a roof or changing out windows or putting new siding on, things of that nature, some things that might not even require a permit, those things would still be reviewed in the Historic Preservation Overlay District. But most of those are administratively approved. Actually, almost everything, the way that Chapter 17 is written right now, is administratively approved.
And then when it says designated properties, is that someone that has requested a designation?
That
or-
is every property found within this boundary, isn't it?
And just to clarify, that exists today in
Correct.
Chapter 17. It's not something you're adopting.
Right.
That was
This-
already in place.
Yes, this is already in existence. It kind of lay dormant, I feel, for maybe a few years. And we weren't really doing those reviews. They were being done, they just weren't being done at the level where we had the board established and we had policies in place to help kind of guide that process. We've had meetings early on with the Historic Preservation League of Temple, HPLT. They're a very active group, and they brought some concerns to the city about making sure that these reviews are happening, establishing a Historic Preservation Board to kind of bolster up some of those historic preservation activities within the city. And so our department's been working closely with their group to hear some of those resident concerns and make sure that we start moving the ball in the right direction to address that. So usually those who buy in a historic district know that they are buying in a historic, they want to be in a historic district because it's not an HOA, but it is a layer of protection for their property values. And you usually see property values in historic districts are at a higher level than those even, one or two streets over. So it's an investment. Some people might not know that they're in a historic district and, just happen to find out because they apply for a building permit, and then it goes under that concurrent review for that certificate of appropriateness. So basically, we're wanting to just maintain the historic characteristic of the homes found within this district. But as Bryn said, this is all in existence. The only thing that we're looking at today to ask you guys to take forward for action is going to be just that minor amendment, letting us base our reviews not only on Chapter 17, but historic preservation best practices, as well as the Secretary of Interior standards, which I'll go over those here in just a second. Do questions count against my time? I'm just curious.
I don't mean to sound crass, and I even hesitate to say this, but that's in my neighborhood. And you call it a minor, a minor change or adoption, because those things are already in Chapter 17. This is the part, this is the crass. It sounds to me like you're dusting off the hammer. And
So much for your pink door. Just for
right,
your pink
right,
door.
exactly. And I'll just be quiet for now.
Do you remember the home on Ninth? That
Yeah.
just was completely,
I do.
goes against the
Yeah,
grain of.
yeah,
the
at Ninth and
historic
Nugent. I do.
Shannon, do you mind if I say something about that?
No.
Inevitably, if there is a violation, it comes to code compliance, and we get at it too late. So the house on Ninth would be a good example. There was a house that had, it was a one story that kind of a casita looking house that had some purple trim or something that was painted. We got complaints about that, but it all happened long before we could stop it.
Sure.
Overall, just from my point of view, it's great to have somebody like Kelly in her position, because then they have a go-to person, whereas previously there was nobody that anybody could talk to.
Yeah.
And I think we all may have different takes on the whatever fuchsia trim or whatever it was, or the house on Ninth. But it does help not just contain the neighborhood, like kind of keep it as is, as historic, it can kind of keep that look. So the intention is not to go after people, but to protect your house from my mother's, who is also.
Unless I want a baby blue door.
I'm with you 100%, but that's.
To me, it makes sense. And again, this is personal, and that's my neighborhood. To me, it makes sense to maintain the outward, the structure in dormers or whatever's there. But I know members of the HPLT, right? And they all have their own views. And those, in my opinion, are that board, those views are mostly in alignment as a board. And I don't know that alignment reflects the neighborhood necessarily. There's people that love it and that's their thing, right? That's all for now.
Is it appropriate to ask in reference to your mentioning Ninth Street, what happened, or is it?
Well, new owners came in. Basically what happened, there's a beautiful red brick home, and they came in and they sort of whitewashed it.
Well, first they painted it and then they went back and kind of unpainted it.
Did they? And just did a poor job.
They added a little.
They were trying for the Joanna King.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say.
They added a little portico, so it was two things.
Shutters up and.
Yeah, they did paint,
Not
but then they did
just
some structural as well.
Okay.
Historic home.
Okay.
I just know that, in one thing that, in fact, I had some family in a couple of weeks ago, and one thing they said that they love about the neighborhood is how, a lot of historic districts, it's all these big homes on big lots, and, and at my house, literally right next door to me is a 1,800 square foot standard, just a nice little house. And, I don't know.
That's part of the charm.
That is part of the charm.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
the differences, and what I'm afraid may happen with this. And this is one thing that I talked about whenever we were putting this in place. Is are we going to give these people? It's not a nice way to say it, but are we going to give? All of a sudden, are we going to have neighbors pitted against neighbors. Of course, probably the person that lived next door to that weird whitewashed house, that was, that was pitting neighbor against neighbor.
I'm gonna say it's already happened. And there are already neighbors pitted against them.
Don't tread on me.
Before we had chapter 17.
I don't know if it was before we had chapter 17, but before Kelly came along and started pushing, actually looking at using chapter 17.
Okay.
I think it was very active and then lay dormant.
Well, and that's my point.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, that's what will be said. Well, it's always been.
Well, I think, and the addition of this language is actually providing flexibility in review. So we would, if somebody wants to do, new paint, I mean, the language is that it must be compatible with with the characteristic of the home itself, but then also with the surrounding structures. So if, it's not like, no, you cannot paint your house this color. It's just looking to kind of keep that consistency and keep that uniqueness of the district intact. And like you said, we do have a very unique and amazing historic district, because you can have a, 5,000 square foot home right next to a small Craftsman, 1,200 square foot home. And it's just that charm. So what is applicable to one house, it'll be different. It's the same level of review. We want to make sure we keep that Craftsman characteristic of that house. We don't want it to try to be ornate and add those elements to it to try to make it look like the house next door. It's really evaluating it lot by lot, basically, to see what's appropriate and just historic preservation best practices. So it's not, you can't do anything. It's let us help you look at the options and help you not only protect your own home value, but contribute to this beautiful historic district. So it's really more of a process with the applicant. It's not just a yes or no type process. And it runs concurrently with, if there is a building permit requested, then it would run concurrently with that.
And just as a reminder, I mean, if we have an ordinance on the books, whatever happened in the past about why it wasn't enforced or not, that's not an appropriate level of a decision for staff to say, this ordinance or this resolution, this policy that was adopted by council, I'm choosing not to enforce it. So if you don't want those standards, then we would repeal the ordinance. But as far as we're concerned, as long as you have that in place, and when we become aware that there's a process that hasn't been followed, it's incumbent upon us to bring ourselves into compliance with what a council, in this case, a past council, but until you act as a body to say you no longer want this historic preservation process in place, it's incumbent upon staff to enforce that, and not something that we're looking to bring hammers, or we're doing the job that you've asked us to do, and it's not an appropriate decision level for us to decide which ordinance to enforce and not. So if there's direction from the body that you want to revisit the historic preservation policy or standards, then we can certainly do that. But I just wanted to point out that what is brought before you today is not the idea of whether you can paint your door or not. That's already in existence. And if we need to have a more comprehensive conversation about that, we're certainly absolutely willing to do that. It's just that, when we become aware that there's something that needs to be more closely followed, that council's adopted, it's incumbent upon us to do that.
Totally agree.
I do have one question. You made the comment that they get a building permit, there's a process for reviewing, discussing, etc. But a lot of this we're talking about is with the building permit. How do we educate the people in the historical district of this regulation and their need to be aware and cautious? Is there an effort underway, or has there been one underway to do that?
There is. HPLT has been doing a good job of spreading the word, welcoming new neighbors, letting them know that they're in historic district, passing out city's contact information for the planning department, letting them know that if they're doing anything to the exterior, because interior has no historic preservation review, it's only exterior items. But just getting the word out. I think they've been key in getting some of that information out. And then once we have our processes lined out, I'll be working with marketing communications, making sure that we have things available online that city staff can direct folks to, or if they're just looking on their own, they can find that easily. And then I think once we're trying to ease back into this because it's something that obviously it's wanted. The residents of this district came forward and we've spoken with, during the historic neighborhood planning district planning process, preservation was something that was brought up quite often by residents, and that was within the district and outside of the district. So we know that it's something that people are interested in and people want, just making sure that we have it where it's not cumbersome and it's not, something to impede a property owner from doing work to their home. We want to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that it's a benefit to our residents and not a hindrance. So once we get, I think that level of stability in this process, I feel like we'll do a bigger push for that education.
I think that the HBLT is also trying to educate the realtors, so to get ahead of the sale.
Right.
To let those people know that they are buying in a specific area and there may be certain things that they're going to have to do in order to, or things that can't change.
Right. And then also that's been beneficial because we do have a realtor on our historic preservation board. And I think that also is a way to help spread the word.
Guy Fowler.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So again, just the Secretary of Interior standards, what I was saying about that, it kind of gives us that flexibility. It's really making it a broad review for us. So basically it acknowledges the fact that there's going to be needs to alter or add to historic properties. We know that things can't just stay exactly the same for eternity. Trends change, needs change. And so we want to honor that. But the main thing is just retaining that historic character of the property. And we would do that by making sure that we can preserve, where possible, those historic materials and features. So, things, just decorative trims and things like that make a property unique. And that's really what the Chinese mansion, for example, if they wanted to come in and strip that tile roof off and put on, composite shingles, that's where the level of review for historic preservation, which that would completely alter the look of that home. And that is such a key focal point in our community. Everybody has
to do your home.
So
Did you do
They
it?
tore that, no, other people did, but it was a local tinsman who built that home, and that roof was that decorative tin, and then the guy pulled it off and put shingles on it. So it took away from.
It would,
Wasn't me.
Probably couldn't afford it.
It probably was not cheap.
Yeah.
And again, our chapter does allow for considering financial considerations when making reviews as well. We don't want to utilize that, but it is a part of the ordinance. So there's that to keep in mind as well. And things that we know that can be put back later on if another owner comes in. We're not going to just say, nope, you can never do this. It's okay. We would rather this not happen. It's going to detract from the characteristic of the home. But at the same time, we know it's something that if another owner comes in and really wants to bring, some of those historic characteristics back, it's something that could easily be changed back. So we have flexibility there as well. So quickly, I'll just run through these. These are the standards. There's 10 of them that are listed from the Secretary of Interior standards. So basically choosing an appropriate use. So making sure that the new use that's going into a building does minimal change, if any. And then standard 2 is preserving the character defining features. That's what we're talking about, some of those intricate things that just kind of make a house or a structure unique. Those are the things we want to try to preserve. Maintain true historic development. So this is, a time and a place. So you have a mid-century modern, or you might have, an old 1800s, or early 1900s shotgun house or something. You want to figure out what the historic characteristics are of that and be true to those. And then standard 4 is consider significance of later changes. Sometimes there's been an alteration to a building, or an addition that was made, and it becomes historic in its own right, just because it's been there and it's kind of developed its own personality. Standard 5 is protect the construction and craftsmanship. Again, those distinctive materials and features and finishes. We want to make sure that those are maintained where possible. Repair rather than replace. So if you have like a large wraparound wooden front porch and you have a corner that has water damage, we would much rather have somebody just rip that out, replace it with new wood to match the existing wood porch, as opposed to ripping off the entire porch and putting on, you know, like some other type of material like the polywood or some of those others. So where you can repair rather than replace is going to be the recommendation of staff. Standard number 7 is to avoid destructive treatments, such as chemical or physical treatments. Sometimes you see where people blast brick and it just trashes the mortar in between the bricks, things like that. We want to help guide property owners to, and we have things called preservation briefs. These are documents put out by the National Park Service with a lot of great information. That's usually our first line when something's proposed that doesn't really meet these standards. We will help educate a property owner with all the things that are available to them out there. They might just not have known that there's a different process to use. And so anyways, that's just part of those standards that helps us be able to work with our applicants. And then standard 8 is to protect archaeological resources. I don't think we're running into that too often, but you never know. Standard 9 is to make alterations and additions compatible. So we just recently had a case come through. Actually, I think it's on your consent agenda today. Yes, for the zoning for that plan development, which would allow for an addition. And that is a prime example of something that's going to be an addition to a historic property, but it's compatible. And you can tell that it is a new addition. So that's a great example right there of change in our historic district. It's not, nope, this is how it looks. You have to keep it this way. We have new uses and new needs for this family, and we want to make sure that we can accommodate that while still maintaining that historic characteristic of the property. And then standard 10, make new additions reversible. So if there's an addition that can be made in a way that you can remove it at some point, if somebody just really wants to get this back to its original configuration, make it so it's not going to destroy the original structure in the process of doing that. So this is the only thing that we are looking at today, language-wise, for Chapter 17. And this is just adding that Secretary of Interior standards for the reviews. And so you can see that's now going to be found in Section 17-8. And again, that's just the reviews, recommendations, and decisions of staff and the board would just be based on historic preservation best practices and Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So this was brought from the Historic Preservation Board's recommendation on June 16th. And then we just recently, this week, actually took it to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they also recommended approval of this amendment to Chapter 17. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the language or any of the other aspects of where we're at. I did want to mention that there's some other revisions throughout the document. Amanda went through and made sure that we, fixed some typos, redid some of our numbering and cleaned that up a little bit. This document need a little refresher, but this is the only language change.
Besides the spelling errors that I fixed.
And spelling,
Yes.
just typos.
Council, any questions?
I want to thank you. I'm the liaison for this board, and I think you're doing an amazing job. And everyone on the committee, I think, is excited to get started. They're interested in being educated, and I think it's going to really benefit our city. So thank you for what you're doing. And Amanda, thank you for keeping everybody straight. With that Fowler on there, sometimes we go down a rabbit hole. Okay, you corralled us, you got us back.
Richard. And that is great, because I had actually worked with Guy before the board was even established on some things that had come up in the historic district. And he was one of the ones who said, well, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And then once we actually got to talking about, the purpose of the board and, just this process and, the historic, he's a history buff, he loves it.
Yeah.
And I think once he started you know, looking at all the different benefits of it, he's really, I mean, he's probably one of our biggest proponents now.
Yeah.
So he's been very vocal.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
Item 5 is to receive departmental updates from Transform Temple, Police, and Purchasing and Facilities. Mr. Craig.
Hey, thank y'all. As you can tell, this is a little outdated, a couple of months. It was a few weeks old when we first got scheduled, and then I guess Tim didn't want to see it. He kept and then canceled it. But I think this is still important, and the information here is useful because when we did make this up, it was right in the middle of high grass season. It's been our biggest struggle this year. I think if I haven't spoken to every council member and city manager or assistant city manager about some of these issues, I would be surprised. It's been tough this year. So I want to just kind of start off talking about transport department and what we do, who we are. I divided basically up into 3 sections. We have the code compliance, we have abatement, which is a couple of different things, and we have projects. So code compliance, we deal with high grass, which is number 1 on the presentation. I have junk and debris, junk vehicles, parking on the grass, and then property maintenance, which includes boarding up houses and our building and standards process, which involves demolitions. One thing I didn't put on here is we also red tag houses, which is kind of an in-between, meaning that we throw a tag on there saying it's not safe for habitation, but it may not meet the guidelines for actual demolition through our building standards process. So we do some of that. Our abatement teams do both mowing and demolitions. On mowing, we have, Chad, how many city-owned properties? 138 city-owned properties. That includes some right-of-way, some temporary. When we're buying right-of-way for a road expansion or something like that, we try to take care of that as we go along. So city-owned property right-of-way, and then obviously code mode, which is probably the biggest that we do. And then demolitions, we do right-of-way demolitions, once again, expansions or projects. We generally are involved. In fact, I can't think of any demos we've done recently or that have been done recently in the city that we haven't been involved. And that's all the way from a little bitty house to JJA, which was Ford. What was it, Anderson? Johnson Brothers. Sorry, Johnson Brothers Ford. Big builder. So obviously, and once again, obviously with help from purchasing, who keeps us straight in so many ways. And then we do demolitions on substandard structures through our building. And then finally, our projects team, special projects, was kind of created way back when Jonathan was still here, and then continued with Brent, who this is our downtown team that drives around and does many different things, mostly downtown cleanup, some city mows, especially if you're in the downtown area. We pay real close attention to those because all the investment and stuff, we want to make sure that they really look good. In neighborhoods, we deal with the tool trailer, which is for projects or if communities want to have a cleanup event or something, we'll take out our tool trailer. We're in charge of our tool library, which is really grown. I have a slide in regards to some of that, but it's really getting used well. And then our dumpster drops, which really got pushed with Nancy, but we're in with her group, but we're in charge of dropping the dumpster. Every, I guess twice a month, every 2 weeks, more or less, we drop a dumpster and a trailer for tires in various parts of the city. And it's really paying off as far as we're concerned. So I've used it personally. I know my brother and my family have used it. So our assumption is the majority of the stuff that goes in these dumpsters or in that tire trailer is stuff that we would be picking up off the street. Mm-hmm. So it seems odd maybe to have a free dumpster, but it really is paying in our time and effort. We do board ups, which I mentioned, I think earlier. And then for our zone and some CIP, but mostly zone projects, we just try to do maintenance, and that can go from everything to watching a structure to demoing a structure, mowing around it. We keep a pretty close eye on that. So projects, just real quick, during that 3-month period, we filled our final evening position. Since then, we've had a person shift from the evening to the day shift. So we still have one open position now, again, in our evening crew. No, George isn't our most recent hire anymore. We've got another guy, Michael. We have Monday through Saturday coverage, and most days we have coverage downtown or in our projects team from 6 in the morning till approximately 9 o'clock at night. That can shift around some if there's a First Friday event that goes later. We'll shift their schedule to stay late to try to help with that. And then we do a lot of help with Dan, working with Dan, and for events for our downtown group. And at this time, both crews were mowing, and they had some overtime. So board ups, we had 8 board ups during that 3-month period. That is generally what happens for board ups. We have to make sure that the structure is cleared, and to enter a property without a warrant, there has to be a danger. So all the board ups that are not our property or not a right of way, we as a PD will call and ask for assistance. Say we've run some people out of here, or the structure is open and vacant, it's dangerous, and based on their recommendation, we go. Let me go back. We have our mobile pressure washer that we purchased this year, or this last year. Is wonderful. It holds, it's got a huge tank on it, and so we can drive it anywhere in town and not be restricted to having to fill it up as we pressure wash. And then also we work with UBO and to occasionally get meters put on a fire hydrant, and we can fill up. Yes, sir.
Backtrack a couple.
Sure.
Where do you guys stand on the mowing?
That's a good question. So at the height, we were over 400 behind. This is code mows. Thanks to Bryn and Tracy and their teams, we found some money and we were able to contract out some of our larger mows, mostly in the zone and out west. Right now, we're a little over 200, I think. So if you don't mind, let me talk about that just real quick. I think most of y'all understand the mowing process. We get a complaint, we have to give a letter. Y'all have dictated 10 days, which we think means 2 weeks. So we have to give them 2 weeks to take care of that. At that point, it goes on our mow list if it hasn't been addressed. And so by any measure, from the time that we get a complaint or notice it to the time we would mow, it would be over 2 weeks. During summer, it obviously gets worse. That extends. Also, we turn in our mows on Monday or Tuesday. So if we write up a mow on Wednesday, it's not going to get turned into the mow crew till the following. We don't do it on a daily basis. It makes no sense to do that. We do. So generally, it could be up to 3 weeks before we even give it to the mow crew. So, and then at that point, the worst we had ever been before, I think, was 6 to 8 weeks. Right now, we're still behind, but I think we're more in the 6 week right now. Maybe we're right now at 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. During the worst part of it, obviously, over 400 mows, that was like 3 months or something. It was crazy. We were down a man on our mow crew. We have filled that position. That's where that evening guy went. We were working as much overtime as we could. And then once again, the additional contracted mows. So we're back down, way down, and more in line with something that we're comfortable with. We're still behind, but we're doing much better.
So it could be, and the reason why I asked is there was one lady that, she was getting in touch with me every 2 or 3 days. I think you probably know what I'm talking about. But they're getting in touch with you every 3 days. And so realistically, it could be from the time the letter's sent out, so it's finally gotten to it could be 6 weeks. That's kind of a minimum.
Easy.
Right?
Yes.
6 to 10.
Yes. Now, what happened this year was obviously and I'll show you my numbers here in a minute. The freeze, this is going to sound crazy, but the freeze in February shut everything down, and then rain. And it wasn't like it rained for 2 weeks. It would rain for a day and a half, and then the sun comes out for a day and a half. Just about the time it dries up enough for us to go out there and mow, it started raining again. So not only was the grass growing more than it seemed like it normally does. It was keeping us from being able to go out there and address it. Mr. Mayor, when we do have situations like that, Chad and I both are driving around when people are complaining like that. And grass did get up above 4 or 5 feet in some areas. We go and look and we try to address safety issues primarily. That's our goal. So if there's blocking of whatever triangle, the visibility triangle, so you can't see around corners. If you've got high grass right next to an occupied home, things like that, that's what we have to focus on first. So we try to shift the mows as seldom as possible, because we're kind of like first come, first served is the way we should deal with it. If it's dangerous, that always takes priority. So we keep an eye on it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Yes, sir. So 8 board ups, mobile pressure washer, we used it on this. This was Bryn's suggestion. Actually, I think she contends that she just made a comment and then Nancy made it happen, but it was great. This is on Market Loop there by the HEB off 31st. This was 3 months ago. You should go see it now. If you haven't seen it, it's really cute. I had kids turn in. Oh, Nancy's done a presentation. You know, seen something. So this was us doing the pressure washing. We primed it all and then we did the background paint. And it took quite a while, not just because it was a lot of work, but because we bought Sherwin-Williams out of this, was it the green paint we couldn't get or the blue?
We couldn't get either one.
For a while.
Yeah.
So we, all the way to Austin, Waco, we couldn't get the paint. We finally got it, but that's how much paint went on this farm. It was a great project and I think it was a worthy project. It's going to stand a long time and look good. Oranges, and you and I spoke about this
Yes,
orange
we
thing
did.
before. This is
It's a special treat for
the reason
you.
I brought this up is mostly because friends thought y'all should know about this. But not only do we do all these other things, but we get phone calls from this woman in particular who was frustrated with her trash, that other people using one of those large dumpsters, that's a shared dumpster in her house. Understandable, people get frustrated with it. You get contractors or whoever come down the alley and filling it up, and the people who live there can't use it. This woman was done with it. She was done with that. She was tired of, just frustrated with the city overall. And she said somebody had stuck a bag of oranges in her water meter box. Now, theoretically, go get it out. What do you, but we went out and took care of it because she was already angry. So why don't we help out a little bit? Why don't we just go do this? So we did. We went and got this bag of oranges. And I think it helped. If nothing else, maybe it kept Public Works, Justin specifically in solid waste, from getting an earful from somebody who's already upset. And that is not the time for us to be having a logical discussion with a citizen about this is not our fault. This is not something we normally do. Let's just go take care of it. It was easy enough. Henry ran out there within just a couple hours of us finding it. Hopefully it helped. So we have stuff like this happen pretty often. I would say at least weekly, probably not daily, but there's weird stuff that comes from. And it's all right. It's part of what we're trying to do. Did I do that okay, Brim?
I just think it's a fascinating story. I walked into the CIP meeting one day and there was talk about these oranges in this meter box. And what? What did I miss here?
Yeah.
It looks like that's like a grocery bag that somebody's like, I'm tired of carrying this.
Well, I wonder if her trash can was full. I wonder if other people had filled up her trash can, so they just threw it in there. Wow. Yeah, it's weird, and weird stuff happens, and people reach out to the city in the oddest times. I'm sure y'all have all had it happen, and it has nothing to do with us. We're not in control of it. It's not our fault. But we're still going to get blamed. I think the cemetery conversation the cemetery conversation that happened several years ago, y'all were catching a lot. We were all catching a lot of heat about not taking care of a cemetery. Well, it's not our cemetery, but nobody cared. Nobody cared, and y'all had to address it. So, or I guess we all did.
Buford, was
Ma'am.
the lid on top of it, or was it open and the bags was down in?
I've got to tell you, I did not go
Oh, Buford. Shocking.
out. No, Henry went out and took care of it. I assume the
That's my
lid
question.
was.
Like, how do you know there are oranges in your meter box?
Chad?
And there are questions.
The lid was off. Somebody pulled the lid, stuffed it full of oranges.
Well, there's more than oranges. There's
Yeah,
no
that looks
bag.
like they've gone
I
back.
think
I mean, there's a cinnamon bread loaf.
there was some marshmallows.
oranges.
I don't think, they do look like marshmallows, but I'm wondering if they're not something moldy.
It's
I
like
didn't
great
examine
big
them.
portobello mushrooms.
well, I think my point here, and you know, it doesn't mean that. I think the point here is,
Questions.
but we can sit here and ask these questions.
Will that concrete-
I don't know, but we can ask these questions all day long, and it's not gonna solve that one problem.
Well, did we put?
They never
the
dreamed of
concrete
it, get
thing
city
back?
council though, did
No, yeah, we put the lid back on.
Because that's a danger.
It certainly is.
There was money in the middle of it. You should look.
Oh, no, I
How
bet
about-
Henry did.
How about
Tell-
body parts in the bag?
We,
Easy.
What is happening?
that would be gone.
Was there anything else?
Bag of oranges.
Truly Scotty would have sent an email on that.
They weren't just mushrooms, they were other kind of mushrooms.
I said, oh, real mushrooms.
Anyway, so we get odd stuff and we can, and we do talk about it a lot and how did this happen? And we try to find solutions. How do you solve somebody putting oranges into, you don't. There's no solution. You just deal with it and go on about it. So.
Well, clearly you put the
Could've
lid
been
back.
molded.
You put the lid
Can't
back on.
make- You can't put more oranges down there.
So talking about our tool library, we have started mailing flyers with our high grass notifications. So in our tool library, we check out mowers. So if you have a City of Temple library card, and additionally, if you live within the city limits, we will check you out a mower. You can come pick it up and, or a weed trimmer, or I think a battery blower as well. We got all kinds of tools. So we're hoping that people who are not mowing their lawns are not able to mow their lawns. So we're giving them options to solve the problem themselves without us having to come out and do that. So this is one of the things we did. And so we have numbers for May, June, and July, 37 items checked out in May. In June, there were 63 items checked out, which is great, with 7 new patrons. And then in July, we had 51 new items checked out with 7 new patrons. We are working with the library. My brother works over at the library and he pushes people to us all the time, but the library knows about us and helps us and gets the word out. It's a great program. It started off slow, but I'm really feeling positive about it overall. And I hope y'all are too. Dumpster drop we spoke about. In that time period, we did 5 districts, 176 tires, and 12 and a third basically tons of trash. That's a lot of trash, a lot of tires,
Wow.
a lot of tires. So this is a great program too. Abatement, we mowed within that 3-month period, 296 city lots. We had 535 orders to mow, 125, it says code lot. Oh, that's for code. Yeah, code lots mowed. And then we did 8 capital improvement project demos within a 3-month period. A lot of work. And here's a couple of the demos. This was out on Old Howard, which is obviously complete now. I think that came up in the last zone project meeting or board meeting. I had one on East E, and then a Poison Oak, and this is JJA, which is the remainder there of Johnson Brothers property up across the street from the high school. And that really looks good. Along with that project, having those done, it's really opened the whole
big help.
place up. That's going to be a great little, the whole project's great. Neighborhood districts, we at this point had done 3. Those are the 3 we were working on. Y'all have heard all about those. We did, for code compliance, our first building and standards commission in a 1.5 years. And we took, at that point, 5 substandard structures for demo. And then we met again in September and we had another 3 or 4 that we took for substandard structures. It's great to be back rolling in that again. We started using our neighborhood planning district grading, which is what we do. We grade every structure in the planning districts. And we started using those to target working on the substandard houses, working with Nancy and her rental investment program to try to get some solutions there. We took 60 complaints to the municipal court. That's basically a citation. We have to call it complaints because we're not peace officers.
That's after buildings and standards, isn't that have.
Yeah, that
met?
is totally separate from
Well, how do you get from buildings and standards to municipal court?
You don't, it's two separate processes.
Okay.
Two separate processes. And as a reminder, and I think I've mentioned it to you before, every complaint that goes to court is, we have a code meeting every week and they bring it to us. So to us meaning Chad and I and Tom, who's our code manager. We look at every case before it gets approved to go to court. So it's not just our guys out there willy-nilly taking people to court. We talk about it.
Susan, for the most part, cases that go to Building and Standards Commission are related to property standards. So if
Sorry.
the home is in unsafe condition.
Right.
That's
Sure.
typically the type of cases that Building
Right.
and Standards Commission, they are the final say on those
Right.
unless it's appealed to district court. And then municipal court, we typically use that for other types of code violations, so jumping debris, junked vehicles, any other type of
That
code
was
violation.
the distinction that I was unclear on.
I'm sorry. Susan.
No, that's okay.
I didn't
That's
answer
fine.
it well. We are trying to expand that process and take some of our substandard stuff to municipal court now and finding people rather than just going after them to demo. That would be those middle ground cases that it's not really a health and safety hazard, but it is breaking. It could head that way quickly. So we're trying to do some of that. We're now started a few months ago working with the county and the constables on cases of concern. Y'all may know that they've expanded their junk and debris program at the county level. So they're really going after some of that. So we're trying to work in conjunction with them.
Good.
And then we've instituted, which we've been trying to work for a while, any case that's over 90 days old, we are doing a systematic review of old open cases. Sometimes cases get lost in the system. They just drop off, or the guys are, or they're having a problem with them and they just can't find a solution. So we're going back, we give them advice or tell them what to do to move forward to get them off the books. Here's a bunch of numbers. And I'm going to show you all some charts real quick. And I realize I've gone way over my time. Here we go. But it's just 90 days in coming. This is way overdue.
You get more time.
So a quarter to quarter count. This is actual numbers of cases. So February through April, and then May through July. Obviously, high grass, you can see, went up by 170 or whatever that is, more or less. And but the other cases were not out of line, except that the other, which would be substandard housing or permit violations, things like that, did drop some. Well, I guess so did the parking on the grass. Junk vehicles stayed about the same, and junk and debris stayed about the same. So here are the percentages, which are actually not far off. The numbers went up, but the percentages are relatively similar. And in the case of junk vehicle, they're exactly the same. So that kind of made sense to me. And what I'm looking for is some weird aberration when I'm looking at charts like this. The source, meaning where do we get our complaints? The on patrol dropped from 73 to 64, but you can see the citizen complaint rose. So that makes sense. You would expect one to drop as the other one rises. So the more citizen complaints we have, because we inspect every complaint that comes in the door, that would give us less time to patrol. So it makes sense that we would have fewer patrol cases. So I stopped in March of this year. So this is the number of code cases overall. And stopping in March is 21. So, and I'll show you why here in a second. I'm sorry, in March it was 210. So we went 294, 199. So this is overall number of cases. You add in April, that 210 is this 210. So whoa. And I guess y'all can probably all guess what that number is. It's higher.
Yeah.
So we went from 73 in February, understandable with the ice thing. Rain. Boom, high grass. So that's where we were. And then high grass or code cases by category. Once again, shocker, high grass is huge.
It's pretty high.
Yes, pretty high. It's very good. Well played. Well played. So this is what we deal with to a certain extent every year. Not complaining, but this is a reason why we got so far behind. And so actually, we're already through October, so the future is upon us now. We're still following up on old cases, continuing our building and standards process, which I mentioned to you. Enforcement of Chapter 14, which is the mobile food unit, all that stuff. We're preparing for new hires. We have some more that we're doing, and we have a new code position open that is listed right now, along with filling out that evening position in Transform Temple. Doing a final presentation to Bryn in a couple of weeks for our rental inspection and registration program, which we hope we'll be bringing to you very soon after that. I know it's been a long time coming, but I think we got a good solid kind of idea to move forward. And then we're trying to get our coordinator position, which is our frontline person, a code enforcement license. Sometimes people call up and say, I need to speak to a code officer. And Brittany knows the answer, but they still want to talk to a code officer. So let's make her a code officer so she can say, I am a code officer. She knows all the stuff, but it's just a matter of getting her signed up. The projects and abatement crew are going to continue with CIP demos. They finished the wall, that should say finished wall mural. And then they're going to continue to focus on those. They still are to this day. And departmentally, we're continuing our mapping and database of neighborhood planning districts. That's getting expanded a little bit. Still excited in using that information for code and fix-ups and rental and reinvestment, et cetera. We're doing in-depth research on property with overdue liens and reoccurring mow orders. So if we've been mowing a property for years and years and years and years, we need to get that off of our books. So it means we either need to find a way to purchase it or find some way to clear up the title so somebody else can purchase it and make it active again. They're not paying taxes and we're mowing. So we're taking the brunt of that. Revised, that should say revised, the rental registration suggestions are going to Brent. And then continue parking research. We're trying to hire our parking manager position to have them lined up before the 2 new parking garages that are lined up. And we have moved, we've worked with PD and moved the parking enforcement officer over under Transform Temple from PD. And so that's been going on for the last few weeks. And it's great to have her over there. So I think she's enjoying it. We are a great person. That's it. Any questions?
Well done.
Thank you.
I have a question about high ground.
Do you?
About what?
Let me go back to that one slide. I think
No more slides.
8 weeks, that's what I heard, 8 weeks.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you all for letting me present this.
You bet. Thank you, Buford.
Thank you for bringing it to us.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Hey,
How are you?
how are you?
All right.
Good. No bags of body parts?
I don't talk like that. Knock on things and say things like that. So thank you all for the opportunity to be before you. We certainly appreciate the support of the city manager's office, city council, and mayor. Protecting, serving, and working in partnership with our community to prevent, reduce, and solve crime with integrity, honor, and dedication. That's what we're all about. And our work starts here: relationships, trust, and communication. And so I like to give you an update. I've updated these through the end of September. So we're into October, but through September stats, we were down 17 sworn law enforcement officers. We made the transition into October. You authorized 5 new positions, so you can add those to 17. That's what we're trying to fill. We've got 12 folks still going through our process. Our last one, our next testing is October 30th. The deadline to apply is October 25th. We had a couple of vacancies in non-sworn positions. Since we've prepared this, we believe we've got those positions hired, so we should be back up on our non-sworn positions. The challenge for all law enforcement across the country and around the world is finding officers that want to fill police officer roles. So I want to walk you through. So just to orient you, all these slides are generally set up the same way, but we compare the year against year and then year to date versus last year to date. So you can see average total response time overall has gone up by about 41 seconds. Our response time for officer response time has gone up about 27 seconds. Average dispatch time has gone up about 14 seconds. Dispatch center is not unlike us. They're struggling to fill roles in a training cycle almost constantly. And if you'll go back to February, February skews all of our data because we were just really busy in February during Winter Storm Uri.
Look at overall calls for service, they've gone up about 2%. Self-initiated activities gone down about 5%. And overall total events, we're staying about even with where we were last year. These are part one crimes. So the most significant
What's self-initiated?
traffic stops.
Initiated by the officer.
Yes, sir. And so part one crimes, you'll see we are holding even on murder, rape and robbery, slight increase. Although when you deal with smaller numbers, understand the smaller number makes it a bigger percentage difference. Aggravated assaults down 13%, burglary of a residence down 14%, burglary of a building down 16%, larceny down 17%, auto theft. We talked a lot about that last year. It's currently down 42%. And in comparison across all crimes, violent crimes are down 5% at the end of September, and property crimes are down 13%. So given all the factors, our staffing deficiencies, the struggles of challenging of scheduling, I feel pretty good about where we are for this year.
We're above the national average because the national average has violent crime up for 2021.
It was, yes.
So we're
in
better.
many areas, yes.
Yeah, when I say we're up, we're better than the
Yeah,
national
we
average.
shared that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're much better, down 5%.
Now we have three months to go.
Right.
Manage expectations.
But so does
There was a
everybody
lot of
else.
talk about bodies.
Oranges, yeah. It's only the bag of oranges
I know.
from Buford.
Big bag of.
Well, I feel really good, but most folks, if you ask them what they think crime is doing, they're going to tell you, we believe it's incredibly up.
Yes.
On all counts. Now, I will tell you, I pay attention to the calls. I sign into my computer every day. We have had another string of burglaries to vehicles, all unlocked. And can you guess what was taken from the cars?
Guns.
Handguns, always handguns.
Wow.
And we've tried social media campaigns and otherwise, but we really need folks just to lock their cars, take their guns out and lock their cars up. If you look at citations, and this deals all with traffic enforcement, now just to kind of set this up for you, I've moved most of traffic back to patrol. And they are also filling the bailiff's role over at court in the meantime. So not a lot of proactive time for them. They're dealing with mainly complaints that get put out to target those areas. Traffic citations are up 15% though. Citation charges up 17. You see citation warnings is up 52%. Traffic stops are up 32%. DWI arrests up 9%. Everything's back open. Accidents 6%. And I'm really going to skip down here to the one I'm really proud of is that fatality accidents are down 80% this year. It's fairly significant. We had a lot of those accidents last year. Previous 90 days, we launched our Citizens Police Advisory Commission. I want to tell you guys, I think y'all did a great job with those committees. That committee is excited to be in place. We're still in kind of that learning and educational component. Project Centurion continues to move on. We've gotten to the point where we are hopeful that we're in our final draft and other cities can start taking those forward for signatures. We conducted ethics training for every officer in the department. We got through the July 4th celebration with a new location. Very well done by all involved. We've had a number of community outreach events, coffee with a cop, burgers with a badge, Special Olympics events, tours of PD. We have groups and daycares and schools that just come in and they get served snow cones. We have a snow cone trailer, if you didn't know. It's pretty awesome. We got through meet and confer. We had a Food for Families celebration, and Food for Families is just now kicking off again. We started hosting a violent crime meeting. So approximately once a month, once every other month, we host a violent crime meeting. We invite Bell County, Belton, Parker Heights, Helene. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's see if we can't figure out ways to work together. Our recruiting efforts have launched, Epic Recruiting Project. We've got a first glance at a website, a recruiting website that's come in. In the next 90 days, we're going to continue to focus on relationship, trust, and communication. I am in Leadership Temple this year. So one day every month, I'm out doing those kinds of things. So getting to learn a lot about the city and network amongst folks that are out here. Community outreach events again. So we launched the Renata Square Substation dedication. We've hosted a number of coffee with a cop events, and we have burgers with a badge upcoming this Saturday, Wilson Rec Center. We'd love to see all of you there if you can make it. And we're preparing for the fiscal year 22 budget. So this slide was prepared beforehand, and we're already there. We're super excited about the animal shelter remodel process, which begins as well. We're going to plug in our Animal Services Advisory Board. Our Citizens Police Academy began September 13th, so we're in that process as well. And these are just a number of things that we do. So again, appreciate all the support in the structural changes we've made, the compensations. Citizens Police Academy, that's Officer Blue. This is Officers Blue Summer. Lots of events, lots of activity. These are some summer camps, tours, Special Olympics, the Officer Memorial event that we hosted at Temple Police Department. And I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Nice.
Don't get
one today.
I'm happy to entertain any questions.
I like your donuts.
Who doesn't like donuts? All right, well, thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good job.
Good job, Linda. Sorry, Mr. May.
Sorry about the bum rush there. Sorry about the bum rush. Bum rush. I can't beat Chief though. Oh my gosh. When do I go?
Purchasing and facility services, dividing this up between purchasing and then facility services, because that's kind of the way I manage them too. So for purchasing, Happy New Year. It's been very busy the last 90 days for us, and purchasing, just getting all the annual contracts around. You basically authorized 71 of them. Thank goodness you didn't have 71 agenda items. We consolidated them this year. And then Bryn has administratively authorized 43 contracts. So we've been very busy with annual contracts. Next 90 days in purchasing, last council meeting, you authorized us to proceed with procuring an electricity contract beginning in 2024. We're working on that. You'll have on your next council agenda on November 4th, a recommendation from staff to enter into a new copier printer agreement. Parking garages, we're continue to stay involved in helping and assisting with the construction manager at risk process for the parking garages. We've got many bids and RFPs that we're working on. Library master plan, that's going to be going out this weekend. We'll advertise that. Athletic field and turf management services, that's primarily focused on Crossroads Park. Crossroads Park custodial services, we're kind of looking at that process a little bit different going forward. Golf cart fleet GPS tracking system, you have on your agenda tonight the golf carts. They are delayed in shipping just because of parts, not being able to get parts. But a separate contract that we're procuring right now is GPS tracking for those units. We have a natural gas contract for our CNG fueling services, fueling station, and we're procuring a new natural gas contract for that.
Becky,
Yes, sir.
with the increase in gas prices, is CNG, are we ramping that back up?
Well, I think we've got to
I
continue.
know we've been using it.
I know, and
Using
it's
it.
kind of scary. We're about $6 a unit MMBTU on natural gas right now.
Oh,
And so
wow.
compared to that, to what we pay for diesel, it is definitely, we've got some challenges and opportunities to look at going forward on that, because our consultant tells us that he's not seeing a decrease based on the shipment of that natural gas overseas and so forth. It doesn't look good. So
Okay.
we do have some challenges that way.
We have shifted a lot of our fleet, or more fleet to diesel
Right.
versus the CNG too.
We did go down the last year. We were going around, we decreased it by about 20% in usage. And we manage that in the contract because we only buy so much per month. But yeah, it's definitely challenging times with regards to decisions, but we've got a huge investment or significant investment. I shouldn't say huge, but significant investment in that CNG fueling station too. And we still have an investment in a lot of vehicles that's the energy they depend on. So.
Gotcha.
And just to make sure everyone realizes, it's not like a dual fuel. So the CNG vehicle, that is the only source.
Yeah.
Until we replace it.
We've got a couple contracts out on the streets right now. That's the Blackland Road extension. Dr. Ott mentioned that project in his presentation. That's budgeted at $6 million. We also have a project for 41st Street wastewater improvements. And also we have on the streets, the rehabilitation of the Apache elevated storage tank. That's the tank behind Fire Station 5. Crossroads Maintenance Building Landscape Screening Project. That's not something in our queue yet, but we're expecting it in the next 90 days, along with the construction of a new field-based operating center terminal building for the airport. We're expecting that in the next 90 days also, along with lots of softwares that we're going to go through a formal solicitation process on. We are working with the chamber on doing kind of like a community-wide procurement seminar. So we're working with Rod on kind of putting that together with him. Moving on to facility services, kind of accomplishments we've had. We're in August, we presented to you office and workspace guidelines. We're happy that that's adopted. That's been a huge help as we look at projects in our queue and so forth. We've had 4 significant roof replacements, Lanier Center, Mayborn Center, lower roofs, Fire Station 4, along with City Hall roof was replaced in the last month. We've had some other project completions. This is a picture actually of the Fire Station 5, the fire we had there. We're very close to having that project complete. We've had some timeline delays just in getting like cabinets and other things that we're facing it just like everybody else is, but we're very close on that project. We also completed the construction of an airport pump station generator enclosure. This building right here is right on the right-hand side there, is right in front of the big airport 1 million gallon tank in front of the airport. And so this, now we have some cover for that generator that's stored out there. We also have completed the installation of new generators at Fire Station 4 and 5. So now all stations, I think, will operate the apparatus bay doors, so they won't get like locked in and have to manually try to get those doors up. And we have completed the construction of repairs to the Lanier Foundation. Library facade cleaning. This is a picture on the left as to what it looked like before, and then kind of a picture. This was taken from the top of City Hall, what it looked like afterwards. I think that looks great. I also like what marketing and communication has done with the branding and stuff. It all looks great. That building's looking very well. Our plans and facility services for the next 90 days, we've got several projects under construction. The first building that I'll mention is the Parks Administration Building, the restoration of it. That picture looks really squished, doesn't it? Didn't look like that on my computer, so my apologies. So mold. It almost looks like a house. So it's not squished like that, so my apologies. But what you're seeing there, if you drive by it now, you're going to see this blue coating. And what that is a vapor barrier. It's a liquid applied vapor barrier. Usually in housing and stuff, you see that Tyvek wrap. Instead, we're using this. We feel like it's a better project, and it's going to longevity of it is a better solution on this building, and cost-wise, it was about the same as going with the Tyvek. So right now, that's what we're in the process of doing. This is the last kind of phase to getting that building we've replaced the windows, and this vapor barrier will go on, and then we'll be able to go in and focus inside and get the restoration done inside, and hopefully the mold is gone away. So. Our expected completion of that, we hope to have Kevin's team back in there by the end of January is our goal. Things are moving very well with Target Solutions on this project. City Hall project, if you came in the east doors, you'll see that we're moving right along in the first floor project. Things there are also going very well with Target Solutions. You authorized that contract on September 16th. We're expected to be out of the 1 South Main building by the end of March and back into that space downstairs. Again, it's moving very smoothly, and hopefully it continues to do that, and hopefully we don't run into material delays on that project. Fire Station 3 improvements. This is that picture also looks squished. So this is the building where we had some mold, and the firemen or our fire staff moved out because of the mold, but they're now living on the north end of there. So we have replaced the roof, which it was contributing, but not the problem. But we needed to replace the roof that was at the end of its useful life. And then what we've done this week is we've installed a spray foam insulation on the roof deck. We're not in the heat right now, but it's just amazing the difference that spray foam insulation made to the attic space up there, because that primarily was our problem. We made like a commercial building with a residential look and so forth. And so getting that spray foam insulation in there to eliminate the condensation in the attic space is what was causing the mold. So our plan on that project is to be done in December or January. Clarence Martin Rec, again, I apologize for the picture, but this is a current picture of Clarence Martin Rec. You can see where we've taken out the windows. The first step was to abate the asbestos containing glazing that was in these holes, the window holes that were basically boarded up. So they wouldn't break and so forth. They were painted over and everything. So this is what it looks like today. I'm so excited and anxious to see the completed product on this. The stack will go away right here. These windows will all be stoned in and so forth with brick that's going to look similar and so forth. And we'll put some new signage on the building that's going to kind of match the error that it should and not missing letters. Santa Fe Depot, I wanted to bring this project up. This project, I wish I could tell you was done, but we're again in the problem of supply. We can't get the lights that we need. We did get one light in. We wanted to test it to make sure that we had a good fit. So this is our sample light that we got in. The goal was to match what is kind of on the TEDC building and better light up the front side. Basically, we're going all around the building now. We've got the lights on order, but hopefully by Christmas time, you'll see these lights all replaced, and that will look much better, and it lights it up so much better. If you go, this is actually on the east end, closest to the overpass. And so if you look there, you'll see how much brighter this is than the other lights on the building. So, but we are putting on shorter arms, and that will match very closely to what is on that picture there in the right-hand corner is what is on the TISD and chamber buildings. So we've got some projects in the planning stages, solid waste complex. Council awarded the construction manager at risk contract on this on August 5th. Our budget on this was 8.9 million, and Spyglass is currently bidding it. We're a little bit concerned about our budget on this one, but we're going to be working through that in the next couple of weeks. Service center building A expansion. We've kind of put this one in a holding pattern a little bit just because we want to see where we come in budget wise on the solid waste complex first. We've got some projects in the next 90 days that we're kicking off design wise. The animal shelter expansion, as Chief mentioned, we're actually kicking off that contract with RBDR Architects, which I think you approved at the last council meeting, their contract. We're kicking that contract off for design next week. Public safety skills pad and the police indoor range and admin classroom building. Those are both projects that we're planning to work through and negotiate design contracts for in the next 90 days. I put this slide up kind of where you can see by kind of the list of projects. So I've got purchasing and facility services, and I'm primarily the main project person when it comes to these big projects. So this is what I feel like on those days. Which way do you want me to go? So
have a room named after you at the Central Park for good work.
It's just not a memorial one.
Not yet.
So on your agenda tonight, I hope you support this, but we're asking you to authorize a construction manager agent. This is going to help our department basically do a better job of managing the projects that we have. I am an accountant. I'm not a construction person. I've learned a lot over the last 10 years in construction, but and I enjoy it, but I just don't have enough hours in the day. And so basically what's on your council agenda tonight is to award a contract to Rizzo Associates. They are a construction manager agent. And what they are is they're our fiduciary, they're acting on our behalf. And they basically will help from the standpoint of watching projects, making sure they're built according to the way they're designed, and helping us just in the CM risk process and everything. So I'm looking forward with your support in using their help to add value to these projects and to move these projects along to make them the best they can be. We engage the CM at risk. There is a code in the local government, not local government code, the the state government code, chapter 2269. That's how it's actually a delivery method, construction manager agent is. Some of the initial projects, as I highlighted in the agenda item that we would like to start using them on, is helping us finish up the Parks and Rec Administration Building, Fire Station 3, the Clarence Martin Rec Center, and the City Hall first floor project. And then we also want to use them initially for designing solid waste complex, getting that one wrapped up, and through the CM at risk negotiations, and then service center renovation, depending on how we proceed on that one, the animal shelter expansion and improvement project, along with the library and historic post office heating, ventilation, and air conditioning design contracts that we currently have going. So that's where recommending that we initially focus their efforts.
Put a question on that. She do it?
Well, she didn't beat them, but she did really good. She told me she needed 15 minutes and she did it in 14:30.
Very good.
Since she's already given you the flag, I'll ask a quick question. If you back up one slide, when you said help with the design, it's help not actually design those
No.
facilities, but give value to.
Right. They're very good. They understand how to review plans and to make sure that things are incorporated. So when we put something out for bid, that they're complete. So people aren't like padding their bids and so forth. I don't have the expertise to do that. But this Rizzo and Associates, that's what they're educated in. So
Give us a little background on Rizzo and Associates. A little background.
well, they came to my attention through my assistant, Randy Faust. She came from San Jacinto College, where she used construction manager agents. So that's how we kind of got in touch with Rizzo. We did interview others and so forth, but basically the background is, it's kind of, there's two main guys on it. One that's very good with the books, but also has a strong construction background, but he's really good with the accounting stuff and analyzing things. And this afternoon, he did a meeting on the construction with the construction manager at risk on the solid waste complex, but just really knowing how to question and so forth. So their background is in construction, but Frank Rizzo, his background also, and I haven't really gotten the details on that, but he has a great background also in just the paperwork side of things.
Where are they based?
They're based out of the Houston area, but they're used to commuting. So they're not here every day. Basically, they'll be here a couple days a week. They're his main partner that comes and actually monitors and looks at the construction projects. His name is Colby Kraft. And so he plans, he has already, even before you have authorized the contract on their own, they're coming. They've been here twice this week.
How long do you keep them doing that?
As long as the projects are active and it makes sense to do it.
Coming for free.
Come in for free?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that will end tonight if you all don't support it. So,
We may table that.
Yeah, we'll table that one and move on.
Yeah, we tabled that for at least 2 weeks.
you be the project manager then. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. I will, everybody. I will close this meeting and meet everybody downstairs in 10.